Welcome everyone to tonight's conversation. We're really excited to have you all here. My name is Liz Dykman. I'm co-founder of Midwest Artist Project Services. And tonight we are so excited to be presenting a local artist roundtable. We are going to be talking about the impact of the pandemic and reimagining life with local artists. Before we get started, I did want to take some time to introduce MAPS, Critical Mass, our moderator, Vanity G, as well as talk a little bit about some housekeeping that we need to keep in mind. So first, a little bit about today's co-presenters, Critical Mass and MAPS. Critical Mass for the Visual Arts is a nonprofit, self-formed visual arts collaborative dedicated to promoting, enhancing, and initiating contemporary visual art in the St. Louis region. Their programs include conversations like this one, the 5 Questions podcast, on which you can catch the audio for this event next week, and the Creative Stimulus Award. One of their latest awardees is actually on the panel today. Hi, Samaya. Midwest Artist Project Services is the other co-presenter for tonight. MAPS offers low-cost resources for working artists in all disciplines, collectives, and emerging arts organizations in the St. Louis region and beyond. MAPS aims to prevent new and sustainable growth in the arts through funding opportunities, consultation, and providing access to best solutions for the current issues that affect artists. So a little bit about some housekeeping for tonight. The panel discussion is going to last for about an hour, and then we'll break for questions. So please hold your questions until the end. Afterwards, Sahara Sista S.O.L.S will share an original poem capturing the discussion. During the conversation, please do keep yourself muted. We are welcoming you to submit any questions you have for the panel before the Q&A's segment, in the chat box. Just please make sure to indicate that it is a question for the panelists. You are also more than welcome to use the chat for just talking with one another or whatever else you would like to do. And let's see. Lastly, I would like to introduce our moderator, Vanity G, before we get started. Vanity G is an explorer who finds her joy in being a multi-instrumentalist, writer, bibliophile, and mother. She is also an arts administrator, advocate for young people, and music educator. Throughout her career, Vanity has worked in various capacities for arts and culture organizations, including COCA, the St. Louis Art Museum, the Astor Gates's Rebuild Foundation, Craft Alliance for Art and Design, Youth Speaks, and Brick Arts Media. During her studies, she journeyed through music, economics, and education, resulting in a BS and MS in economics and arts and education. The library is pretty much the only place Vanity truly feels at home. Her roots go back to Southern Illinois. She currently lives in St. Louis with her husband and sons. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Vanity.
Thanks. When I hear about myself, I'm like, I'm not too horrible. I've done a lot of different things, but it's okay. Feel very millennial when I hear my bio is what it makes me feel like. So we are going to turn it over to our fabulous panelists and have each of them give a 90-second introduction. It's easy for me to read bios, but we thought this would be a more welcoming and warming way for panelists to introduce themselves, and it won't feel so generic. So I'm going to turn it over to Samaya, and then Javen, and then Rachel, and then Sister Soul Sahara. Okay.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Hi, everyone. My name is Samaya Sabith. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. I am a multidisciplinary artist, as well as a wellness practitioner. And my practice is very fluid and combines my professional experience as a wellness practitioner, as well as my background in visual arts and landscape architecture. Right now, my practice is, like I mentioned, pretty fluid. I am working on a social practice and urban farming. I think it's an art project with another local artist. This farm project is collaborative, and we have named it the Afrofuturist Farm Collaborative. In addition, I'm also collaborating with a local musician, Black Spade, and we create sound healing music, and we are going to be going on a residency in August to create a sound healing EP, and hope that we can disseminate that out into the general public once we finish it. And I'm so grateful to be here, and thank you all for having me.
My turn. Hey, everyone. First, thank you for being here. I'm also happy to be here. My name is Javen Solomon, he, him pronouns. I literally had to do a sticky note because I'm into a whole lot of things, perhaps too much. But primarily, I am a multidisciplinary designer and artist. I used, up until about mid last year, I was essentially like a graphic and experiential designer at a local firm. And I, in the middle of a pandemic, decided to go off and do my own thing. Primarily, I've been doing murals, but I've also been into all types of different projects, just ranging in terms of like mediums. So animation, digital illustration, different types of community work, which leads me into my next thing. So I'm also the vice president of AIGA St. Louis, which is, I never know how to describe this damn thing. It's essentially like a nationwide organization for graphic designers and artists. So I've been part of that chapter for, oh goodness, I guess 4 or 5 years. And I, in this position now, help start a podcast called STL by Design, in which case we interview a bunch of different folks at the intersection of creativity and positive impact here in St. Louis specifically, to let folks know that there is a lot of good stuff going on. You know, you just gotta know where to look in some cases. And that said, I also sort of accidentally, and some of you know this, ended up starting this loose organization called Painted Black STL, in which we, a couple of friends and I, essentially help liaise opportunities, paid opportunities for local Black artists that are public facing to really, you know, emphasize Black Lives Matter, but locally in our creative community in the best way, you know, we know how, among, you know, several other things. More will come out, but in short, that's me. Thank you all again.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel Youn. I use they, them, or she, her pronouns. I'm trying to think if I can even fill like 90 seconds and talk about myself. But basically, I'm an artist in St. Louis. I've lived in St. Louis for 8 years. I did my BFA at Washington University in St. Louis, and I've stuck around ever since. My practice is like, I don't know, it's in a weird direction. Like I'm making a bunch of like kinetic sculptures and doing these like multimedia installations and playing with like color and sound. And I'm actually here right now in Passaic, New York, like installing a show of those works. Most recently, I had the opportunity to participate in the 2020 Great Rivers Biennial, which opened at the Contemporary Art Museum last year. And yeah, let me see, my work uses plants, and I love plants. I like to fish. And normally most of my time is taken up doing my day job, which is an admissions counselor for art and architecture programs at WashU. So I'm also kind of working with high school students and helping them apply to art school. So yeah, that's what I'll say for now.
Was it me? Okay.
Your turn, yep.
I'm like, I'm already jotting down things. And I'm like, okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Sahara Sista S.O.L.S. I am your resident poet who likes to spin stories and plays and all of those wonderful, beautiful things about life, and sometimes not so beautiful. So it's just true, right? It's just our narrative. It's just our stories that I like to take down. And I've been exploring how I want to take that down. If I want to do that through videography, if I want to do that through music. So this has been a good time to reflect and do things differently than I was doing it before. I also still am a director of the Poetry Slam team. I'm a co-director. We're gearing up for our slam competition. I'm no longer on the team. I'm just the, director. So I do all the back end stuff. And then I work with the St. Louis Public Library. I work with teens. They're my passion. I think they're definitely our future. So passing the torch a lot to them and letting them explore what they could do and who they could become. So Yes, I feel like that's enough of me. I do a whole bunch of other things. I love sharing with artists and creating and, you know, making sure that we have the best future we can. So, yeah.
Thanks so much, everybody. It's really great to hear you all speak about yourselves, because as I've been just like, I was gone from St. Louis for a few years and just moved back. Well, this has been a very long year. I moved back last year, but since it's pandemic, it basically didn't count. I moved back like yesterday. And just like jumping into everybody's practices, realizing like, oh, I've seen that. I've been to that exhibition. This is the face behind the work. And it's been really beautiful just to like connect all of these dots. And so I just want to reiterate like how happy I am to be able to speak to all of you and just dive into your work more. It's makes me feel really good to be back home again and like back in the arts community, even if it is virtually so. So you all talked about your artistic practices a little bit, and kind of like they're all really just involving a lot of different facets. Javen, you've got digital animation and murals and community work. Samaya, you're doing the Urban Farming Collective, but you're also a birth worker. And I saw that you were making these beautiful kimonos. There's a lot of just like really rich work that all of you are doing. So what I like to kind of start off with is for each of you to talk about what part of your work has like your current focus. And then what has been a big shift? How have you had to shift your work the most dramatically as we've entered this pandemic and as we hopefully start to exit it? What's been the largest change in your work? Does that work? Rachel, would you like to go?
Sorry, breaking mistake to not unmute myself. Yeah, it's been a year, right? Or like, I guess over a year at this point. I don't know, it might not be like the most interesting answer, but like, admittedly, I don't think my practice has changed like that much. Like, I think when everybody kind of like went into like lockdown and there was that kind of initial period where everybody was like stuck at home, like my work kind of shifted to online, and it was like a total mess to like figure out putting everything virtually. So I think things, I don't know, I kind of felt like envious of like people who had like this time to just like, I feel like people were picking up new skills and they were like baking bread, and I was just like, I wish I could do that right now. And so things didn't like kind of cool off for me until I got used to just like working from home. But I mean, really, like, my hours didn't change that much. I think something that I've been like lucky to do is work from home, right? So I have a lot more control over my own time, and I'm not kind of constantly like watched or like kind of required to be in a certain place. So it's allowed me to just kind of like rethink and like reorient like my priorities and think about like my own life and like my space. My house has never been like so clean and like dust free because I'm like actually around to like take care of it. But yeah, I mean, this all kind of happened like when I was working on the Great Rivers Biennial, and a lot of like expectations around what the show would look like kind of shifted at that point. But yeah, I would say like my work for the Great Rivers Biennial really shifted because of the pandemic. Like suddenly, like I realized this opening wasn't going to be like this big, like giant party, and like, you know, people weren't going to be traveling from all over to kind of see it. Like it was going to be so much more localized, that it really became much more of an experiential focus. Like for me, like I wanted it to be, or I guess it just became like this social gathering of objects where you can like walk into this space and kind of like feel comforted by like, I don't know, like that things were like dancing around you, and like you felt like you were with people that you normally couldn't be with. So I think that was kind of the biggest shift that happened this year for my work.
Yeah, I went to the show twice, maybe 3 times, like just to have time to see it all. And I had two, well, did I have 2 kids at the time? I had one at least. I don't remember when I saw it and when this baby was born. But it was just such a great feeling to like be in movement with other people. And that was probably one of my favorite parts of the show, just because it was like so kinetic, you know? Javen, what about you? How are you how have you been responding to this? And considering that a lot of your practice is murals or digital work, some of that seems like it's a lot outside or it might be in isolation anyway. So has it really shifted much for you?
Honestly, I think my practice started to form within the pandemic. So I mentioned that I left my job last year. It as far as murals goes, interestingly enough, I started my first formal mural, at least on a wall. I think at the beginning of March last year. So leading into it, I'm checking my phone every day, like, oh, looks like this virus is in this country. Looks like it's here, it's getting closer, it's getting closer, it's getting closer. And by the time I finished, my first one, March 15th, places started to close down. Regulations here in St. Louis started being a little bit more strict, in a lot of different ways. So, I mean, in my mind, like everyone, right? There's a ton of adjustment to make, but my work really is rooted in, and I'm thankful to say, I was able to rather get into what I'm doing now because of this just like passion project called Lutopia that I've been working on for some time, actually since like mid 2019, which is focused around basically how we can improve our existing spaces here in St. Louis with public facing art, nature, and like sustainable methods, systems, and technology, which in a few ways that's sort of COVID proof. But obviously there's still a little bit of adjustment to make. By the time I decided to leave my job, again, thankfully I had enough mural requests. We'll call them that. That all I have to do is stand on a ladder at worst, right? So similar to Rachel, I know it's sort of boring, but or not so glamorous, but mine didn't change too much mentally. And I'm sure we'll get into this, over time, but that was a whole different beast because, like everyone else, I had these plans as to where I wanted to go with, this Lutopia project to make it more of a real thing and bring it off of social media. But that obviously did not go as intended. But I guess in short, perhaps this answers your question. I just learned to think to anticipate things like this, unfortunately, or either way. I just learned to think of, all right, so how can we consider a pandemic or anything like that in this type of work. So that's really sort of been my main sense of development. And I hope I answered your question. I feel like I said a lot.
And Samaya, can you comment on that as well? I know that, some of your practice, especially with the Farming Collective, is outdoors. And so, and I know at least semi-recently, you had at least posted on social media about some possible contamination on your site because of some demolition happening. So I know that's, that was even way after the pandemic started. So you've got like virus in the air. Nobody knows where it's coming from or what it's doing. Plus you've got possible lead paint dust and asbestos and all this stuff over your organic farming. And so just talk to me about what that's been like for you. And I think kind of once you answer that, I do want to transition into like the mental lift that this is taken for everybody, because physical is one thing, like you said, Javen, but then there's all the mental work and spiritual work that has been needed to keep us going through. So, Samaya.
Yeah, I'll get answer both if you want, or you can just answer one. For my practice, I feel like my practice has like been reborn in a way. I have been able to devote more time to my practice because everything did kind of shut down. I don't know about everybody else, but a lot of us artists like do teaching work in schools, and a lot of that was over. So I was just like, oh, this is it. I'm home with my 2 children. I got a new studio. I had more time to be in my studio. As I mentioned before, I do blend my wellness practice with my social practice and visual arts practice. So a lot of the work I started making was responsive. I feel like the farm is responsive. My partner and I were making the sound healing music. That was responsive. That was coming out of a residency I did at Laumeier. And so we were trying to figure out a way for folks to enjoy something. I'm like, let's do a sound healing meditation because everybody's feeling stressed out and freaked out. We had so much distance between the spaces. And we've done 3 now. And this whole sound healing collaboration is a result of the pandemic. And I think people have really enjoyed it. And then, you know, I just realized how healing my art practice is to me and how therapeutic it is. And so much of my work is even more about health and wellness and joy and things like that, because we did have quite a bit of social unrest and a lot of trauma for people of color. So that was even more motivating for me to start working on the wellness and like visual arts combo stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's just been a trip. This whole thing has been an absolute trip because I feel like I've had so many blessings in terms of expansive support for projects, new possibilities for exhibiting my work, being supported in like just so many beautiful ways. But again, I am a single mom of 2 kids. I'm at home with my kids trying to figure out how the hell I'm going to make money, you know, when I can't go to teach, when I usually teach. But now everything has done a complete 360 and I feel very blessed and happy and hope we never have to experience any of that ever again.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how, you know, I think for some occupations, it is really difficult. Like once you're out of a job in certain industries, it's really hard to pivot to try to find something else. But as creative minded folks, there's a little bit of some ingenuity that comes into play in figuring out how to make a way for yourself, whether it's, you know, having like an actual full-time job like Rachel does, or saying, I'm going to have my hands in all these different pots so that if any one thing doesn't happen to work out, I've got some other things lined up. And I feel like that's always been the way of the artist. Because, you know, because this country, this world is real finicky when it comes to supporting artists. And so, you know, it's never have all your eggs in one basket, as they say. For Rachel and Javen, and just to remind, like, we can all jump in. Don't feel the need to keep yourselves muted if you don't want to. Just to keep the conversation open, so I don't have to be like all teacherly. It makes me feel weird. But feel free to, you know, respond to each other too. How has mental support, like, where have you been getting your support from? For mental support, like social support to make it through. Samaya, like you said, you've been working with like Spade to do the sound healings, and you're working with another artist on the farming. Javen, Rachel, like, who are your other people that have been like helping you kind of make it through this, and not just through your artistic work, but just like day to day? Like, some days you don't want to get up and clean your house. Some days you don't want to work on that animation or think about sketching a mural. So like, how are you getting through these days?
Yeah, I guess I don't know. It's weird to try to like reflect on like what things were like a year ago, now that like the CDC is like, whatever. It's over, like just go outside, no mask, whatever. It's really weird. They couldn't even give us like a week warning or something that this was gonna happen. So it's weird that like suddenly I feel like everything's being forced to like return to normal. But like I remember seeing something about toxic positivity, and I thought that was really interesting because I'm like very like easily like trying to be like, everything's gonna be fine and great, and it's like COVID happened, everything shut down, all these opportunities were kind of lost, and the future was like almost like bent on like an alternate timeline like streak. It was so weird, like, and I felt like so uninspired to make art. Like, you know, millions of people were dying, getting sick. Like, even though like I like was fortunate that like nobody around me personally was like really affected, it's like it was still just like such a shit show in the world. And then George Floyd happened, and like all these like kind of bigger things were going on, and it just like felt like such a kind of like trite thing to like make art. So it's like I really kind of needed to step away from the studio and just like be a human, and not try to be like toxically like positive. Like I remember like spending those first few weeks being like, everything's gonna be fine, like, you know, maybe by the end of summer we'll be back to normal, and then just like having like such a weird like out of nowhere meltdown. I was like, okay, I just needed to cry, because like everything's really weird and messed up, like, and I need to process that. So yeah, it's like I had to take myself away from like forceful positivity and forceful like productivity in order to like forget everything was messed up. Like I just kind of like reflected, like took some time off. Like obviously like I was still doing my job, and that kind of helped me like distract myself for a little bit. But I really just needed time, and I'm lucky that I could like have time, like in like kind of that grace period to just like chill out, I guess.
Yeah, I understand like that toxic positivity. I don't know if what I'm thinking is like the exact definition that like you were reading about, but so we were living in Brooklyn at the time when the pandemic hit, and I had all these plans to visit family over the summer before we moved back here. And literally like me and my child and husband left New York under the cover of darkness at like 3 a.m. to go stay with my in-laws, because he was working in a place that had like very high COVID rates. And he was like kind of like a medical first line team. And I didn't want to be there in case he brought COVID home with my child. And so like, I didn't get to say goodbye to any of my friends or my neighbors. It was a very quick decision. Like we decided one day, I was gone 2 days later. And I just like never quite got over that of not being able to say goodbye. And I feel like for a lot of people, COVID has left like this pandemic in a lot of ways has left a lot of things hanging open and like created new wounds and left it unable to close like old ones. And so I feel like I'm still fighting through things too. And I don't know if I will get over those things or just have to figure out how to work through them. You know, what about you, Javen? Yeah.
And Rachel, the point that you brought up about like it's because it like it is kind of not kind of it is really weird to like speak on it and to even think, you know, that this was a year and damn near a year and a half ago, really, that this all started happening, and it all just feels like 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 it's all just been one like long day, right? So one note that I want to say is I have a few ideas. I'm not entirely sure where this temperament of mine came from, but in a lot of ways, I've been forced to sort of deal with things as they are and not necessarily be too positive about it, but, you know, have a belief or be rooted in a belief rather that things one way or another are going to work out. So that said, at first, you know, I'm so thankful to say my family has always been, you know, that force for me, that grounding force, well before, during, and, you know, God willing, long after, you know, this pandemic. So, you know, I've been able to talk with them, with my wife, and just, you know, be able to air some things out. And, you know, a few close friends of mine who, you know, I'm just able to talk about a lot of like really in-depth things. After a while, though, admittedly, I kind of realized for myself and myself only that I sort of started to have to look inward to to realize that no one's going to give me the peace that I'm looking for. And this is still something I'm working on, just to throw that out there. But you know, I took on like meditating, started doing a lot more yoga and just practicing mindfulness and just working on being present and, you know, just and being thankful for you know, even having a present to be in, right? Because there are a lot a lot of folks who are not able to say that, you know, unfortunately. So I I don't know. I've just sort of been dealing with myself and just working through things. I had to learn to be a lot more open about things and communicative. I've always been, I'm the oldest of all my siblings, but I've always been sort of the more quiet one. And, you know, like when I was a kid, I just used to sit in my room with headphones and just draw all day. That was just me, right? So I really had to learn to express things, because if I didn't, it would just like gnaw and gnaw, you know, at my mind all day long. So that's been a pretty frequent practice of mine to this day. But, you know, I'm afraid there's no clean answer to this one, because, you know, again, this is something I'm still sort of figuring out. But, you know, definitely the folks around me, and, you know, in a few ways, sort of sitting with myself and just, you know, being honest about the state of things and how I feel about things, communicating all in, you know, all the glittering generalities, as it were, that come with that.
Yeah, I think that's you know, this internal piece and just trying to find it within yourself. That's like a lesson for life, right? You know, there's a lot of times that we just hope that, you know, like a binge watching on a TV show or the podcast or this text chain with a friend or a phone call is going to bring us back to life all of a sudden, or that one book is going to change our life, or that one thing. And it's never that one thing. It never can be.
That's right.
Because like, that's just not how like our minds or spirits work. That definitely is like all the internal work that we have to do every single day, just to like stay present and try to work through something. And it ain't pretty a lot of times. It's not always supposed to be, but that's what makes us human, right? And I really appreciate you saying that, because like there have been some days where I'm like, if I could just have this one thing happen, I would be so set. And then I go, but girl, these other things have happened and you still don't feel set. So like, let's check that real quick, right? So yeah, so I think that's a really great reminder. What I'd like to do for the second half of our conversation, because we're about 30 minutes in, is try to like shift towards like some visioning and thinking about the future in terms of like your practice and how we engage with our community, whether we're talking about our artist community or through community work that we're doing. And all of us are parts of multiple communities on top of that. So you can kind of think about these questions however you like. So one question that we were kind of excited to talk about were systems, and how we can imagine these different systems that we work in. Samaya, for you, I know a couple of systems that must be at the forefront of your mind are thinking about your wellness and birth work, and how mothers or people who are birthing or choosing to have children advocate for themselves, and who are in place to advocate for them. And also, you know, food, people having access to quality food that isn't far away and doesn't cost an arm and a leg. So I'd love for you to kind of kick this off and talk about how you've been thinking about systems in your work and how you've been imagining them differently and how you manifested that, or thinking about manifesting that in your work.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm putting my visual arts website in the chat too, because there's my wellness stuff, and then this is like my more artsy stuff. So just so you all get to know me a little bit more. I just feel like we're having a global shift of systems and what those are and which ones we need to get rid of. And it's been awful, but I think there are some beautiful things coming out of it. And I think we all realize like how the smaller systems that are closer to us and the ones that we have control over are pretty important. And I think for me, like just reimagining systems of like my own autonomy and like what I can do for myself. And yes, I am one person. No, I don't have to be the everything to everyone, but what can I do as one person in terms of an artist, my art practice? How can working on this farm space change people's ideas about beauty or, you know, provide access to food, but also be a therapeutic and healing place. Yeah, I just think systems are just good and bad, and I'm just trying to really figure out what my place is in those, because we're talking about race, we're talking about gender, we're talking about sexuality, environmental, we talk about capitalism, like everything's just kind of being blown up and being ready to start over right now. And I feel that in my personal life, but I also feel like my art practice, like I mentioned, has like been reborn and it is being reborn. So this is a very exciting open-ended question. I just, you know, I'll pass it over to somebody else to see what they think as well.
Rachel,
Samaya,
go ahead.
Sorry, I think Samaya, to your point in specifically, you know, thinking about like race and gender and sexuality and all these different things, I honestly, and you know, you all let me know if I say something off, but I am of the opinion at this point that we, in a space where there are, so, you know, every day, every hour, damn near, there's a new thing. Did you know that so and so in Ghana is going through this? Did you know that so and so? And I'm not going to do all these examples, but the point is, I think we really need to start to think about, in a healthy way, all of it, like in a very holistic manner, because I'm of the opinion that none of this is really disconnected. And I know that sounds, you know, sort of, but it's true. You know, the more you think about it, you know, what does capitalism feed? All the isms, you know, so what are these systems that we can start to create together, and locally specifically? I'm a huge proponent of that as well, to really start to look at things differently. And I won't say I have the answer, but a thought of mine is that, you know, creativity is most certainly what's, you know, the necessary thing. And who's got creativity in spades? We all know the answer. We just don't want to pay them, right? But you know, I really think the systems in place are a lot more, or they never really worked, but they're linear, right? Whereas these need to be more of, you know, spider web shaped, or, you know, spirals or something like that, things that aren't necessarily give and take, right? Because it's not just this or that, because that's clearly, you know, been pretty harmful to a lot of us, you know, in the last, I don't know, forever amount of years. So I think it calls for this and that and these other things.
Yeah, we're even in creativity where it's based on all these other isms, how people are paid, how it's perceived, how art is allocated or viewed. It's just polluted by so many isms all over the place. Rachel?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about capitalism lately. And I guess I don't know like how to reimagine what that system looks like in a new way, because it's like I was born and raised and breathed capitalism, right? Like being in this country. So it's really hard to like even remove myself from that. But I think like, I guess from like personal experience and kind of going back to like having to spend this like past year like really kind of dealing with like myself and like reflecting on everything, I feel like it was weird. Like when COVID happened, the cogs of capitalism like kind of slowed down for a second, like really forcefully, and obviously they resumed turning. But I don't know, there was this kind of moment where I was like, what if like museums just like die off, and like, you know, with a pandemic, like our funding going to go towards the arts? Are grants going to be available? Are the opportunities going to run dry? Which fortunately they haven't, but it was kind of like, I don't know, I feel like I kind of had to like take a look at like myself and like my art practice and like and what it means, because I was like, well, if nobody's like telling me to make art or have no opportunities to work towards, like what do I do? And it was like, I don't know, I feel like I kind of thought about like how, I don't know, my work isn't really commercial or lucrative, and like I'm not afraid to admit that, but like that's okay. Like I just want to be able to keep it going, like make just enough money to like almost break even, or just like continue to have that purpose. And it was really freeing, because I started like doodling or watercoloring and drawing and woodworking, and like playing around without trying to like capitalize on like every single like skill or experience that I have. Like, and I think that's something that I've been trying to work on for years. Like, I went to art college, had this like kind of idea of like this like manifest destiny of being an artist like planted into my brain. So it's like, I feel like a lot of people come out of college like with this like complex, they need to like fulfill this like destiny, right? And now it's like, I'm just trying to like, I don't know, live in the moment. Like, that's a really corny thing to say, but
you're trying to be more present.
Yeah, it's like I can build a table and not like be like, I should make a business and try to like make money off of this. It's like, nah, just like I can just build a table and like enjoy it in my apartment, and like and be happy that like I took a minute to make something. Like, it's like, in a way, it's like I exist because, I don't know, I'm putting forth some creative effort, even if that table is like not that great looking or like super well crafted.
You were able to put your labor into like, you enjoy process, right? Like, sometimes things are about process, not necessarily the product or whatever the outcome, whatever
exactly
it might be. And that's really important too.
Yeah, and I think even too, like, because like social interactions like pretty much like stopped, and like, you know, art openings weren't happening and things like that, it's like I feel like it's made me more kind of like intentional about like my interactions, rather than just like casually going to like show face at an opening and not even to like really look at the art. Like, it's so great like looking at art now, because it's like usually you're masked up and nobody's like allowed to approach you anyway, so you really get to like soak it in.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great segue, because one thing I wanted to talk to all of you about is how, you know, obviously like you haven't been able to engage with all of your different communities in the same way. And so I'd really like for each of you to kind of talk about how you might shift how you engage with people based on like how you've had to do things differently during the pandemic, and maybe how you hope that interactions change or engagements change with the different communities that you're involved in. Anybody?
Hold on. Let's think. I think it's like a combo. You know, I think we all have like a certain opinion about social media, but I know that social media has been a huge way for me to like share my practice and like share who I am, and connect with people. So I love social media for that. And I also do my best to keep a disciplined relationship with it and good boundaries with social media, so it can be a positive space for my practices. I also feel like the farming stuff or like the sound healings have been like kind of like a sneaky way to meet people or like do stuff with people, because I'm like, okay, we're outside and like you can sit over there and I can still be with you and make a connection in that way. So that's what I've done. I think being outside, we realize is a huge blessing because we can be free and breathe and, you know, do things without so much worry.
Yeah, and actually before anybody else responds, Samaya, you brought up a really good point about social media and how like you might have leaned into social media more than you had before because of the in-person interactions where we're leaving. And, you know, I think that's something, as Javen and Rachel, as you think about your responses, to maybe also kind of tie in how social media has been, how it's been an asset or not, or how you felt about how social media has played into your practice and engagement with your communities.
Well, yeah, I think social media was really central to it, because it's like once I didn't have like a physical community to be around, it's like that almost became as like immaterial as social media is perceived to be. And I don't know. Yeah, I try not to like demonize social media. I mean, obviously it's had like some bad like mental side effects like on me, and I'm, always trying to work on that and not be like doom scrolling through Instagram. But I don't know. I feel like Netflix released that like documentary about social media, and then it was like, oh my God, it's this horrible thing, nothing is real. And I haven't watched it admittedly, but it's like, but I disagree. It's like those people that like, even if I'm just sending like a flame emoji to somebody, to like an artist friend who's like making new work, like that person's like a real person, I think, unless it's like a robot, but like I don't know actually, but I think social media was really important, and especially like, for better or for worse, when these killings happen, or like, these movements are happening, and like you can't necessarily like march in the street in the same ways, like being connected online and knowing that like you're not kind of like alone processing this is important. It's also important to be able to like walk away from it, I think, like especially with like the Stop Asian Hate things happening, the Atlanta shootings. Like I was just like, I need to like bow out like right now. So definitely take it or leave it. But yeah, I think social media was really important. And while I'm still trying to like figure out my relationship to it and not just like posting things for the likes, it's like it also is my way of like putting myself out in the world still. And I do think a good amount of opportunities I've had have come from social media. So
that's really interesting, because I do wonder if, because it's social, right? It's not just like you're posting a thing on a website and can't really see the interactions. With things like Instagram or Twitter, the responses are immediate with folks, or not, depending on the algorithm and if they see your work. And I'm just wondering, like, how does that, or does it, is a better question, impact how you view your own work and like your personal feelings of worth? I don't, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but I feel like sometimes the number of likes that you may or may not get can maybe impact you if it's something you maybe were really excited about or thought other people would like, and it didn't get the response that you want. And that feeling is a real thing, especially when we're not with other humans physically on a day-to-day basis who usually validate us, right? Or tell us how they're feeling, but in a way that feels like very human and loving. When that's missing from it, and it's just this transactional thing without comments, it's just likes or thumbs up or fire emojis, like how, like, because I send them too, so I know exactly what y'all are talking about. Like, how does that impact your views about yourself and your artwork, Jaden?
I mean, I'd be lying if I said it, didn't make me feel good when I get over 100 likes on something, right? I won't lie to you all. You don't deserve that. But
you'd be lying if we said it didn't affect us too. So,
so I mean, I've got I could do a dissertation on how I feel about social media, as a lot of artists and creatives could, right? But I had a deeply existential time with Facebook and Instagram specifically a few years ago, and I essentially had to tell myself, all right, it's not about the likes per se. It's not about all of this extra stuff that you see folks doing. This is literally, despite how folks are using it, this is just a tool, right? So once I came to grips with that, I started being a lot more strategic with how I treated social media. So I backed off Facebook. I'm definitely Instagram heaviest. And I'm pretty sure all of my opportunities have come from that in every project that I've described, except for AIGA. Everything has come from Instagram. I think because I've, moved forward with that mindset of saying, all right, don't look at, so-and-so showing off this thing or that thing, but just post this thing, do something cool and don't put too much stock in how people feel about it. And hopefully, you know, the right people or the right person, you know, reaches out and says, hey, I like this thing. You want to come do this thing? So that went okay on on my end. And, you know, I'm thankful to say that. But, you know, even I had a route where like I would just create stuff for, so, oh, I'm going to kill, you know, I'll make this thing and, oh, this is going to go crazy on Instagram and this is going to do this and that and so and so. And it'll only get, you know, however many, you know, interactions. And I'm like, oh, but, you know, I realize now that, you know, I just try to put some good energy out there, honestly. Like, I don't argue with people. Yeah, I definitely don't argue with people online anymore. I don't really speak on, I don't interact with as many things as I used to, right? And just to throw this out there, like, in the beginning of my formative years and, you know, some of my peers' formative years, Facebook really became the thing, right? So when I was in 8th grade, like, Facebook was a big thing. And like, you know, so I literally, and, you know, a lot of us literally grew up with this in our formative years. So I, at a certain point, just had to take a step back. I also went to an Instagram/Facebook conference a couple years ago, which really put some things into perspective. Another dissertation, but you know, it's a tool that helps if you choose to use it that way.
And you can set boundaries, kind of like what Samaya was saying, like just setting the appropriate boundaries for it.
Yeah.
So we have like, oh, go ahead.
No, you got it. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say we have like a few more minutes before we open it up to Q&A, right, Liz? Is that correct? I think we got like maybe 7 more minutes, 7, 8. Okay, she says yes, that's correct. So I think what I kind of like to ask maybe 1 or 2 questions, but I think I'm going to go with this one. Can each of you kind of talk about how, like, in what ways as an artist, and then maybe in what way as a person you've grown the most over the last year since the pandemic started? I know, like, for me, it has been an exercise in extreme patience because I have a 2-year-old at home and now a 3-month-old. I don't know why I had a baby during the pandemic. It was not a smart decision, but I did. The baby's here. It's not going anywhere. It's going to get older, hopefully, by the grace of God. Thank you. And so, you know, for me, I've learned how to speak up for when I need time to myself, even if that's to spend 2 hours baking cupcakes that don't turn out very good. But damn it, I'm gonna make these cupcakes because it's what I want to do and I need it, just like Rachel's table. And so can each of you kind of talk about what that's been for you as just personally, if you want to share, and as an artist? I think people would be really interested in hearing that. Samaya, why don't you start?
Like I told you all, I feel like a whole new person. Before COVID, I lost my mom. So I thought that was bad. Then this happened. And I feel like losing my mom was a huge catalyst of me like revamping my life and like really looking at life with a new, fresh set of eyes and like, wow, we have a very limited time. We don't know how things are gonna go. And it's just one of those like pivotal life moments where I just started to like reevaluate where I was going with things and am I truly happy? And I think COVID was another thing like, hey girl, what are you doing? What can you do better? What can you do with more joy and vanity, like you were saying, like prioritizing myself, speaking up more, looking at my boundaries, looking at my interactions, my practice, like just really making sure I'm living the life that I want to be living and I'm living it for myself. And for my creative practice, that really meant for me to just do all the things that were in my mind. Like, you know, this brain is like IKEA. So many art projects. And I'm like, oh, you know, and there's things I have like, you all have no idea what's in my mind. I'm sure all the artists on this call can understand. But I've just been like, hey, let me just do this. I'm gonna make this project. Who cares? I did it. And it's been very great. So I'm sure I could expand and I could be even more open, but I'm really happy with the amount of open I am right now.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. I feel like I'm gonna be different and half a new person. Maybe not a whole one. I still have some growing to do, but maybe I'll be half a new person by the time this pandemic passes. Javen, Rachel, either of you?
Yeah, I feel like I maybe kind of touched on this earlier, but like it was kind of just like evaluating like what's important to me in art making. I think again, like I had to just like have like kind of face the fact that I was like, you know, I probably will never ever like live off of this fully, and like that's totally fine. And I don't even know if I would like being a full-time artist. Like I'm sure I would love the freedom, but also I feel like there's a kind of playfulness to my work that I feel like comes from just like being able to like just mess around. And so yeah, I think that's really important because it's you know, it gives me, I mean, like if you think about like what it like means to be like a great artist and then to like sell like work and show in museums, and like how it's kind of, I don't know, the reality of it being this like weird like tax break game for like wealthy people, like it's like art is like really depressing in that kind of framework. So it's like I kind of need to like localize it, think about like what I'm doing, why I like it, what I don't like. I think with this cam show, again, like I don't think people are gonna really be into buying like moving flailing sculptures. I wouldn't, but like, but it did bring people like momentary joy, and that was awesome, and something that like you can't put a price tag on it, but like for real, like it was like really amazing just getting the opportunity to share that work. So yeah, I'm gonna try to like have that mindset moving forward, and just like tackle projects. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I'm never like ready for the next opportunity that I have, and I'm grateful that people just like trust me with like big projects and stuff. But yeah, I'm just gonna try to like remember like the important things.
Yeah, and to not to be too much of a cop out with my answer, but you know, I don't know if I can say too much that's more distinctive than Rachel and Samaya's answers, because like, you know, for me it's really reinforced for me that life is honestly short, and you have we, as much as we like to think, oh well, statistically we're supposed to live this long, we honestly have no idea. So that really, you know, I've you know, in sitting with myself, a conversation I've often had with myself is, listen, how much does this matter to you? How much of your energy is worth this thing? If it's not worth a lot, leave it the fuck alone and just go on, because you know, COVID's everywhere. You don't know if you're gonna, you being me, you don't know if you're gonna get it. You don't know if your mom's gonna get it. You don't know who's gonna get it. Stop, leave all this little shit alone and just do what matters with the people, you know, that matter. And you know, if and when we move through this whole situation, we'll deal with it as it comes. But you know, right now, just really focus in on what those things are.
I feel like that's a great motto for 2021, you know, like in life, do what matters to you with the people who matter to you, you know, like that people could live by that and leave all that little stuff alone. Like, I think it would make everybody's lives a lot richer because you get all the extra clutter out. And like, that's a thing to behold. The one last thing I'd love to ask everyone, just take like maybe 20 seconds to answer, is outside of your own work, because like y'all's work is pretty dope, who is an artist that excites you, and that who you're excited about? It could be somebody local, somebody regional, national, international, but you know, or you can name like two people, and then maybe if you want, as we open it up to Q&A, which is quickly following this, you can put their like website or something in the chat for people to check out.
Can you hear me?
Oh, this is to the panelists. Sorry. Okay.
I'll go first real quick. Well, I'm really excited about the work of Dominic Chambers, and so is like the entire art market, like the world right now. But I recently, like literally yesterday, like was in New Haven and got to like visit his studio, and I was like really jazzed because like I got to like have a conversation like with him and like see his paintings and his process, and I feel like that's something I haven't gotten to see like in a really really long time. And Dominic is like an amazing just like person, and like when you talk to somebody and you're inspired to make art instead of like feeling like down in the dumpity about it, that's like really special. And I think I was like more inspired to like read and to just like draw and like mess around with art. So yeah, he's really awesome. I'll put his his handle in the chat below, but his paintings are really wonderful. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. Samaya?
I'm sure some local folks know Jordan Weber. He's currently the artist in residence with the Pulitzer. He did something at the Luminary, but I've been able to connect with him through the Pulitzer, and he's visited us on our farm a couple of times, and I'm just really excited about that connection, and I'm excited about his work because he's doing some work related to like farming and wellness and race and social justice. And it's really nice to like see somebody's work and meet them, and they're like a nice, you know, a nice person and a good person and inspiring. And it just makes all of like the big art stuff feel human. And I think it's just important to have like a connection to people instead of just like someone's artwork. Because yes, our artwork is an extension of who we are, whether we want to admit it or not. You know, we are our own package that is also separate from the art. So that's been really exciting for me.
Thank you.
I don't know if I can just name one artist because at least not a visual artist, because there's
You don't have to be visual.
So many. But I'll say two folks. One is a local musical artist named Mad Keys. I don't know him, but his work is so like I've always taken a lot of inspiration and just cues from music in a way that I don't know that I can describe, you know, at the risk of sounding pretentious about it, but absolutely love his music. I'm subscribed to a lot of folks to my own detriment, but you know, locally, I definitely listen to all of his stuff. And this next one's a few things, but Michael Eric Dyson. Yeah. If nothing else, I hope to speak and communicate as eloquently as Michael Eric Dyson does, and you know, communicate an idea and Angela Rye actually, but communicate ideas in such a concise manner.
Awesome. Thank you. And Joe, thanks for being on it and popping all these websites into the chat. I think we are going to now turn it over to Q&A. It looks like we have one that came from someone in our beautiful, lovely virtual audience. In the past year, a lot of artists have been trying to find like alternative revenue streams. That's just been a thing. Like, you know, you all talked about how teaching artist gigs like immediately were canceled in a lot of ways. And people have been using like Patreon or Twitch or IG to like supplement their income in some way. Did any of you explore these alternative methods? If so, can you talk about that? And if you didn't, can you talk about that as well?
I personally didn't, because I think, I don't know, some people are really great about kind of like almost running their practice like a business and like posting on Patreon every day. And I feel like I wouldn't be able to keep up with that consistently. And I don't think that's like fair to like subscribers and stuff. But yeah. I've gotten to do a lot of like Zoom artist talks, like just like over the past year, which has been like a great way to make just like a little bit of money. And so I appreciate people like inviting me to talk. And of course, because of Zoom, it's like I can just do it from my living room, and I don't have like the same like shaky, like I'm nervous, I'm talking in front of people kind of thing, because I'm just like talking to my laptop. But I will say that I have actually like subscribed to more Patreons, and like also to like short courses. Like, not that this is like necessarily related, but I got targeted so hard by like Domestika, which is just like this like online learning platform. And it's like I've taken a couple classes on there, and it's so awesome because it's like with this year, like the way it slowed down, it was like, all right, well, I'm probably not going to go run off and try to pursue an MFA, but it's like I can still be like in charge of like like learning and teaching and like opening those doors for myself. So I don't know, I highly recommend it. Like their classes are like 10 to 20 bucks and like a few hours each, and it's real fun. So yeah.
Javen.
Again, cop out answer. I'm 100% with Rachel on this one. Like I've thought about all types of things. Patreon's been on my mind for a while, but it's like I don't have the energy to maintain this thing, you know. And I don't think anyway I'm that kind of person to, you know, be on whatever device and update that. I thought about merch, but you know, the environmental impact of that has really, you know, to this second held me back. Because you know, if I choose to do something that's making money, I want to make sure that it's at least somewhat, you know, breaks even in terms of, you know, environmental impact. But you know, I've been thankful enough I've been in a position a few times in life where I have needed to really make some money moves, as it were. And you know, I was working a full-time job up until, you know, just halfway through. So I have just really sort of been having fun. And while these things have crossed my mind, and I've also been heavily targeted by Domestika and Masterclass specifically. Yes. But you know, I've just sort of been having fun, and you know, I've had the pleasure of talking to a ton of different folks digitally, and just being able to think some things through creatively. But now I'm not really.
Samaya, did you want to answer? You don't have to if you don't want to.
I'm in the same boat. It's been a connection. Like, yeah, I teach online now, thankfully, but I don't know if I could do Patreon. I've fantasized about it, but the commitment to that, and then if I'm waking up, like I have other projects to do, I don't want people to pay me for something I'm not doing. So
it's like another job in itself, these other things. And it's like, okay, now here's something where I could be making money, but in doing this, I'm taking away my energy from other things that like also bring me joy and could maybe also bring me money. But more importantly, they bring me joy. Patreon's not bringing me joy. Yeah, that's interesting. Go ahead. Go ahead, David.
So quick note, that's something that I think people need to talk more about, is how much time goes into, you know, being on those types of platforms, because it's not, you know, draw or make a thing, put it on there, right? There's so much maintenance that comes with that type of stuff. And, you know, I haven't looked at Patreon's site in a little while, you know, to see if they have that language included, but like, that's a huge thing people should understand. So that was a good question. Is
content creator, I mean, like, I've subscribed to a lot of like makeup YouTube channels because like I just like watch them for fun, even though I don't like do makeup. But it's like, it seems like they're just like, they just do their makeup and then like film a video, but it's like they have like these like really intense like upload schedules, like a lot of production and editing and like teams to do that. And it's like, I have like so much respect for like people like YouTubers, like even though people generally maybe don't like perceive them as like hardworking like contributors to society or whatever. It's like that's like a full full-time job, and I feel like when the pandemic happened, it was like, well, everybody's like at home like now watching these like content creators. Like that's freaking awesome.
They're like independent like production companies, each one
They
of these
are.
YouTubers.
Legit.
It's so much work that goes into it. And I have a 12-year-old cousin who, whenever he comes over to my home, he just pops on the YouTubes for me and makes me watch all these videos that I really don't want to watch. But I've learned so much, and I'm just like, wow, this is incredible, this amount of content on here. Liz, do we have time for one more question?
Of course. Yeah. Does anyone want to, you know, just unmute yourself and ask, or submit it in the chat?
Hand raising question or hand raising thing too. Honestly, I don't know how that works. I've never seen it on Zoom.
And if not, I have a question. Okay, going once. Anyone else has a question for Hope? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and ask really quickly then. And then I really want to make sure that we move to our, I'm like really excited to get to the poem. So just a really quick question. I'm wondering specifically in terms of your art practice, is there anything this year that you found, I'm kind of thinking from a systems or resources perspective, that you would like to bring forward with you in your practice? I think that there's been a lot of like systemic changes over the past year, everything from, you know, we're kind of seeing like WPA programs pop up, or seeing grants being distributed in a different way. And I was just wondering really if you could, so sorry, that was my cat. If there's anything you might like to see moving forward.
I feel like funding is always something that like artists like want more of, and I agree with that. I think it was interesting to see like, you know, when all these artists were like losing their opportunities, and the way that like institutions kind of like almost like shifted their funding around in order to give out these like micro grants. And it's like, I think that was awesome. And I think, you know, like I think we're really lucky to have things like the Regional Arts Commission, but you know, you can only apply for that like once every like what, 16 months, and it's like either like $0 or $3,000 or $20,000, and it's, you know, even Great Rivers Biennial, like that was like a crazy process to go through in order to like receive that opportunity. And I remember like going to Vermont Studio Center a couple of years ago, like meeting artists from like Canada and like New Zealand and like places where like governments like have this infrastructure to like give money. It's like you can just like apply for like $1,000, and it's like it doesn't have to be this like huge grand thing that you have to spend like months like writing for and like basing your whole like life on getting. It was just like, here's some like help for this show. And I think that was really great. It was almost like taking a larger sums of money and distributing them in like much kind of like smaller but more democratic ways, I think.
I'll just thumbs up that. I think the funding has been really important and really helpful to like help projects actualize. Like I'm sure we all have a million things in our head that would be absolutely beautiful to see come to fruition, and having financial support and moral support and investment in terms of like being able to pay ourselves as practitioners versus like I'm just going to be able to pay for materials and I'm using my time, which is also my money, to create something. So that's been really helpful for me, and I would just, you know, really love to continue receiving those blessings of financial support for my practice.
This is certainly an interesting question, because like Painted Black STL is basically founded in this understanding that here in St. Louis there aren't very many, not very many, right? And not to slight any, you know, all these other organizations here, but resources or entities that really truly help provide resources to artists, and Black artists specifically here in St. Louis, and, you know, artists of color and just minorities in general. So I don't know, because I'd be lying if I said sometimes I didn't feel a way about how money is distributed to different types of creatives here in St. Louis. So this is truly a loaded question. But I will say not, you know, as to not entirely dodge the question, I think whoever, and I also really admire how a ton, or at least a few significant like organizations and businesses here in St. Louis, once stuff started to close down, really stepped up and supported artists. The Luminary was one specifically that I thought of, as well as like, or that I saw in the Pulitzer, and I know there are a few other folks, and you know, I don't mean to leave anyone out. But I think folks really need to, I don't know how, but I think they really need to realize that artists are, and creatives are almost invaluable to each community that they reside in, whether that's St. Louis, whether that's, you know, the North Side, whether it's Ferguson, whether it's Shaw or whoever, right? They really need to start to look around and, you know, in a sense, look inward at who the local talent is and really support and stimulate that, because that, you know, in my opinion, is where, you know, prosperity truly comes from. And I'm sorry, I don't have a clean answer to that one, but
you don't have to. No, because
yeah.
you know, art is not just something that lives in a gallery or a museum, or like art is all around us. Like Samaya mentioned, like there's beauty in gardening and farming and being with community. There's beauty in, you know, meeting a person who's thinking about like creative placemaking in a vacant lot. Like there's art literally in every single thing that we do. Absolutely. And I think if we have like, you know, this is gonna be another conversation, but like how we kind of like pivot the definition of what we think of and see as art, I think it'll start to shift the culture of how people think about funding and supporting art. A lot of people think of art as literally like visual things that live in a museum on a wall that they don't know anything about. And art is so much bigger and larger than that. Absolutely. So I think that is a really probably a good place to kind of pivot. I'm going to turn it over to Liz and Sahara, and to hear this poem. I'm excited about it. I'm gonna mute myself. Let's go.
Yeah, go ahead. We're ready for you, Sahara.
Okay, y'all. Okay, just so y'all know, as an artist, it lives here on this like very fun 2 pages that I've artistically created. Okay. The virus is coming. Regulations tighten, trauma triggers tripping us. Shift. Be in movement with others. Response, community work unending. We live in Lutopia. Transplants, natives, artists, teachers, parents. Shift. Life dancing around you. Lose the clock. Under the cover of night. No goodbyes. What is time? Millions dying. No warnings. Jobs lost. CDC update. We're safe. Are we safe? Invisible virus learning to be human unless we're robots. Are they bots? Capitalists be capitalizing. Pause. Just breaking. Yet another new thing. Linear systems, money don't matter in a pandemic. Race, sex, death unfurls, questions, shape, uninspired. Toxic positivity, forceful productivity, need to change, shift, reborn, a rebirth. Meditate mindfully, mental beast barks, refocus, finding joy, reimagine, finding freedom, unleash purpose to monetize, not monetize your purpose. The art lives in us. The art lives with us. Let us say, I made this, but likes makes us all feel good. Social media helps us connect, yet we be holistic in nature. We exist, enjoying process, not product, existential crisis, survival on a dollar, art on a budget, shift. We all shift. We all shift. We all shift. Do what matters to you with the people that matter to you, artist.
Wow. I wish we could all
unmute and clap.
Yeah, unmute and clap. Yeah.
Come on and encapsulate a whole conversation. That was gorgeous. Ah, see, this is why we need art. See, but the people on this call know. We need to get this out to the people that's not on the call because they're the ones that need some preaching too. Amen. Thank you so much, Sahara. That was really lovely.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
I was over here like, oh my gosh, it's such a great conversation. So good job to you guys. It was really good.
Before I turn it back over to Liz and Bridget, to kind of like wrap up and end, there's two things. One is a shameless plug for me. Recently I started on this project back in 2017 where I interviewed a bunch of folks who like identify as parents. And I really wanted to kind of like do this journey into how people became parents and like why. And the whole point is basically for folks who are thinking about being parents or just want to reminisce on the journey that they went through, is to have this collection of stories from parents who were very candid about their early journey from pregnancy or fertility specialists or whatever in like the first year into parenthood. And so I'll pop in my website. Some of the stories and essays are illustrated and they're really beautiful. I worked with a couple of artists. Some are local, some I met and they like live in Brazil, and some are regional people I just think do great work. And some of my own essays as well, just about me being a parent and a mom and how it's like not great sometimes. It's kind of ugly. But I just wanted to share that with everybody because like I'm an artist, but in my art is music and writing. So just to let y'all know, I'm not just out here trying to moderate these conversations. I do have a practice too. So I'm gonna pop that in there. And then yeah, Liz, and actually before I give it over to them, I've got lots of befores, y'all. I just want to say thanks. Rachel, Javen, Samaya, it's been really great. I was actually pretty nervous about doing this because I've been like out of the loop for so long and then been in the COVID loop for so long that I was just like, I hope I can do this and do these artists justice and have a conversation that means something to them. But I think we did all right together. And I just want to say thank you for allowing me to help facilitate this conversation. Liz, Bridget?
I think more than all right. This is an amazing conversation, and I'm gonna echo what you just said, Vanity, but thank you all for being a part of it and making it so special. And thank you, because ending it with a poem, like, and get to reflect on the conversation as a whole is really amazing. I just want to remind everyone that you will be able to, there will be a recorded version of this talk. You can find it through the MAPS website or probably the Critical Mass website. And also Critical Mass will be putting out the 5 questions as well, which will be the audio version of it. So watch out for those. And thank you, Vanity, for adding that to the chat, your information to the chat. And lastly, I just want to thank everyone who came and who was, part of this conversation as well. Thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. And watch out for more programming soon. All right. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.